in 2024. This is an important achievement that demonstrates strong will and commitment of participating states to preserve the integrity of the OSCE. We hope to reach compromise decisions on the remaining issues. Our meeting today takes place amid mounting global geopolitical tensions, escalating international conflicts, and growing instability within and around the OSCE area. Unfortunately, we observe an alarming trend deviating from the norms and principles of international law. International institutions designed to ensure the global and regional security are undergoing acute crisis. This is due to a lack of trust between nations and their pursuit of individual policies, often at the expense of common interests. Regrettably, all these circumstances have a destructive impact on the effective functioning of the OSCE. They are undermining its significance as the largest regional organization dedicated to ensuring peace, security, democracy, and stability in a vast region with over 1 billion people. In this challenging situation, it's crucial to maintain a spirit of unity and inclusive collaboration. It's important to bound countries in a closer understanding that common interests outweigh existing contradictions. With this understanding, Uzbekistan remains steadfast in its commitment to active cooperation with the OSCE and the values it represents. The goals and objectives of the development strategy of Uzbekistan 2030, put forth by the leadership of Uzbekistan, align with the country's commitments in all three dimensions of the OSCE. We eagerly anticipate further deepening our partnership with the OSCE in the effective implementation of the strategy. Uzbekistan consistently advocates for the agenda of good neighborhood and regional partnership. We recognize that the long-term and sustainable development of our country is linked with the stability and well-being of the entire Central Asia. Throughout joint efforts, a new political environment has emerged in our region in recent years. The strong will of our leaders has enabled the resolution of challenges accumulated over decades. It transformed Central Asia from a region of challenges into the region of great opportunities and prospects. We count on the OSCE's continued support in fostering cooperation and connectivity among Central Asian countries, integrating them into global economic and transport networks. We encourage the organization to actively engage institutions and resources in participating in economically significant regional projects. Dear colleagues, the countries of Central Asia are acutely feeling the serious impacts of global climate change and disruptions in the ecological balance. Abnormal weather conditions, increased drought frequency, dust storms, land degradation, loss of biodiversity, and significant reduction in water resources are prevalent. The pace of climate change in our region is double the global average. The adverse effects of the Aral Sea disaster extend far beyond Central Asia. In this context, we support the outcomes of the high-level conference on climate change held at the initiative of the OSCE Secretary General on July in Vienna. We anticipate expanding global and regional projects to enhance the sustainability of our shared ecosystem, improve water resources management efficiency, and promote green development. We consistently fulfill our obligations under the Paris Agreement. We will introduce new initiatives to strengthen the fight against climate change at the national, regional, and global levels during upcoming COP28 Climate Summit. In 2024, we plan to convene the first Samarkand International Climate Forum to exchange views and collaborate on achieving green development goals in Central Asia. We invite the delegations of member states and the leadership of the OSCE to actively participate in this forum. Colleagues, establishing peace and tranquility in Afghanistan is crucial for ensuring strategic stability and security in our region. However, amidst escalating conflicts and wars worldwide, this matter is regrettably relegated to the background and left beyond the attention of the international community. It's imperative to prevent the Afghan people from becoming isolated amid the deep humanitarian crisis in their country. We welcome the OSCE Secretary General's efforts to assist Central Asian countries in mitigating the impact of the crisis in Afghanistan. In collaboration with the OSCE, we have successfully launched a project aimed at addressing cross-border challenges emanating from Afghanistan. We encourage the OSCE and participating countries to support international transport and logistic hub for providing humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan and the Educational Center for Afghan Citizens in Termes. Dear heads of delegations, the prevailing security challenges in our vast region and beyond requires stronger and, more importantly, unified OSCE with sufficient resources to operate effectively. Therefore, it's imperative to adopt the consolidated budget as soon as possible. We support extending the mandate of the current Secretary General and heads of the OSCE institutions. We must seek a balance between divergent priorities and interests. We stress the importance of preserving the rule of consensus in decision-making. It's a fundamental element of our organization's activities. In 2025, we will celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act, a pivotal document that laid the foundation for our organization. Even during the most challenging period, the OSCE remained the platform enabling mutually acceptable solutions despite entirely opposing positions of countries. We firmly believe in the future of the OSCE and aspire to overcome all existing disagreements. We are confident that the organization will transition into a new phase of development, more united, stronger and effective. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. I thank Minister Saidov. The next speaker on my list is Foreign Minister of Spain, José Manuel Albares, who will speak in his national capacity but also on behalf of the European Union. José, you have the floor.
Thank you. Congratulations to Northern Macedonia and to you, Buhar, for the annual presidency of the OSCE in such a complex times. I will proceed in Spanish. Vivimos en la OSCE un momento convulso que supone un reto existencial para la organización. España condena y rechaza la agresión a Ucrania por constituir una violación flagrante de la Carta de las Naciones Unidas y del Acta Final de Helsinki, que nos fundó, y pone en riesgo toda la arquitectura de seguridad europea. No podemos permitir que un Estado impulsor de ambos textos sea hoy quien los incumpla de la manera más flagrante. No podemos permitir tampoco que la ley del más fuerte prime sobre los principios que sostiene esta organización y todo el orden internacional. Por ello exigimos una vez más a la Federación Rusa el fin inmediato de su agresión y la retirada completa e incondicional de sus tropas de todo el territorio de Ucrania. Esta es la posición que defendemos con todos nuestros socios de la Unión Europea como país y también como presidencia del Consejo de la Unión Europea. Nos encontramos ante el momento más crítico en Europa desde la caída del muro de Berlín, un contexto en el que la noción integral de seguridad de la OSCE es más necesaria que nunca. Como también es necesario estrechar los lazos con los socios de cooperación mediterráneos y asiáticos de la OSCE, que son esenciales en la defensa de un orden internacional basado en reglas. Ante esta coyuntura internacional, no nos podemos permitir el bloqueo interesado de esta organización por parte de países como Rusia, basándose en una errónea concepción del interés nacional. Nuestra organización debe de servir de manera cotidiana los fines para los que ha sido creada y que siguen siendo válidos y necesarios, que es el acercamiento entre países a menudo divergentes, apoyándonos en la regla del consenso entendida correctamente. Y a pesar de todo, existe un peligro inminente de parálisis derivado de la dificultad de alcanzar ese consenso sobre las principales decisiones pendientes, el más importante, la presidencia en 2024, el presupuesto unificado, la renovación de altos cargos. Con el primero de los puntos en este Consejo Ministerial se perfila la posibilidad de lograr un acuerdo de consenso para dotar a la organización por fin de una presidencia en 2024. España es firme partidaria de que se apruebe la candidatura presentada por Malta, que es un país miembro de la Unión Europea y a la vez es miembro no permanente del Consejo de Seguridad de Naciones Unidas. Y en relación con el segundo de los puntos, España es partidaria de que haya una renovación o al menos una ampliación temporal del mandato de los 4 altos cargos de la OSCE, la Secretaría General, la Oficina de Instituciones Democráticas y Derechos Humanos, el representante para la libertad de prensa, el alto comisionado para las minorías nacionales. Y finalmente, España defiende que se dote de recursos suficientes a la organización y a sus distintas actividades en las 3 dimensiones, evitando continuar con un presupuesto congelado desde 2021 que es a todas luces insuficiente para atender el funcionamiento de la organización. So thank you, Chair, and with your permission I will pass the floor to the delegation of the European Union.
Mr. Chair, the following participating states have aligned themselves with the statement of the European Union: North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, Ukraine, Moldova, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, Iceland and San Marino. Mr. Chair, the European Union expresses gratitude to OSCE Chairman in Office, Foreign Minister Osmani, for hosting the 30th OSCE Ministerial Meeting in Skopje, as well as for the hospitality extended. The European Union commends the chairpersonship of North Macedonia for its efforts to lead the organization in challenging times, marked by Russia's illegal, unprovoked and unjustified war of aggression against Ukraine. We strongly condemn the ongoing blatant violations by the Russian Federation of international law and OSCE principles and commitments, which also impede the regular work of the organization. We once again call on Russia to immediately stop its war of aggression against Ukraine and completely and unconditionally withdraw all its forces and military equipment from the entire territory of Ukraine within its international recognized borders. The European Union's support for the OSCE stems from our strong commitment to effective multilateralism, firmly rooted in the respect for the rule of law and international law. In light of Russia's ongoing brutal war of aggression against Ukraine, the European Union supports the OSCE's contribution to ensuring full accountability for all violations of international law, including international human rights law and international humanitarian law, and for all those responsible, including in leadership positions. By launching its war of aggression against Ukraine, Russia has flouted the core norms, principles and commitments on which European security is built, as enshrined in the Helsinki Final Act, the Paris Charter, and underpinned in the UN Charter, refraining from the use of force, respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, inviolability of borders, and protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms. Although Russia has been trying to subvert them for years, including in Georgia in 2008, and in Ukraine at least since 2014, these principles are neither negotiable nor subject to revision or interpretation. They remain at the heart of the OSCE and are central to the EU's efforts to promote multilateralism and defend the rules-based international order that Russia is attempting to upend. Today, in Skopje, we want to reaffirm that Ukraine's security is Europe's security. The EU will stand unequivocally with Ukraine and its people for as long as it takes. The EU's commitment to Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity within its international recognized borders remains steadfast. The EU and its member states have been at the forefront of the solidarity effort with the Ukrainian people. We have already mobilized 85 billion euro in financial, economic, humanitarian, and military support for Ukraine and its people. In the longer term, we will contribute, together with partners, to future security commitments to Ukraine, which will help it defend itself, resist destabilization efforts, and deter further acts of aggression in the future. We will support Ukraine's repair, recovery, and reconstruction in coordination with international partners, including the demining process. The European Union and its member states will continue their intensified diplomatic outreach efforts and cooperation with Ukraine and other countries to ensure the widest possible international support for a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace, and the key principles and objectives of Ukraine's peace formula with a view to a global peace summit being held. As our fundamental principles and OSCE commitments continue to be violated on a daily basis, the human dimension of a comprehensive security concept proves to be more important than ever. Russia's external aggression, with Belarus' complicity, is mirrored by harrowing, unprecedented internal repression of dissenting voices, as documented inter alia in the OSCE Moscow Mechanism report. We condemn Russia's systematic crackdown on human rights and fundamental freedoms. Russia must immediately and unconditionally release all those imprisoned on politically motivated charges in Russia and arbitrarily and illegally detained in temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, including the 3 OSCE staff members. We also call on the Belarusian authorities to immediately and unconditionally release and rehabilitate all political prisoners and meet the demands of the people for free and fair elections. Mr. Chair, the EU reiterates its firm support to the independent sovereignty and territorial integrity of Georgia and the Republic of Moldova within their internationally recognized borders. The European Union will continue to support the Republic of Moldova in addressing the challenges it faces as a consequence of Russian aggression against Ukraine. We also welcome the efforts of the OSCE to increase the resilience of the Republic of Moldova in such challenging times. The European Union will continue to work closely with Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, and Georgia, and support their reform efforts on the European paths. The European Union underlines its continued support for advancing a sustainable and lasting peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, based on the principles of recognition of sovereignty, the inviolability of borders, and territorial integrity. The European Union underlines the importance of ensuring the rights and security of the Karabakh Armenians, including those who wish to return to their homes. The EU calls on the parties to engage in good faith in the Brussels normalization process and to finalize this process by the end of this year. The European Union encourages synergies with the OSCE engagement in Central Asia and promotes such engagement with a focus on regional security and resilience, preventing and countering transnational threats, women's and girls' empowerment, addressing climate change, cybersecurity, and the different sectors of sustainable connectivity as identified in the Global Gateway Strategy. The European Union continues to support OSCE's crucial work in addressing the environmental degradation, climate change, biodiversity loss nexus, and its impact on security across all dimensions of security. Civil society organizations and human rights defenders are an indispensable element in the system of checks and balances in a healthy democracy and in holding participating states accountable for the commitments that we have made in the OSCE. The OSCE is a key component of European security order. The European Union wants to ensure that the OSCE's unique approach to security remains effective. To achieve this goal, we will continue to support the implementation of the OSCE principles and commitments in all 3 dimensions and strengthen the OSCE's capacities and field activities. Our aim is to preserve and enhance the OSCE's role as a platform for good faith dialogue on peace, security, and accountability. An organization that has the capacity to deliver for European security for its participating states and its people through the valuable work of its autonomous institutions, structures, and field operations, such as the support program for Ukraine, to which the EU and member states contribute substantially. In order to maintain its ability to act under these difficult circumstances and to allow for its effective functioning across all 3 dimensions, the organization needs to be funded adequately and have the necessary leadership in place. Therefore, we fully support the nomination of Malta, for the chairpersonship in office for 2024 and the joint, undifferentiated extension of the mandates for the current Secretary General and the heads of the three autonomous institutions beyond 2023. To conclude, let me reiterate again our firm commitment to the OSCE and the values it represents. We want to thank you once again, Minister Osmani, for your tireless efforts to keep the organization functioning in one of the most difficult periods for European security in decades. I thank you.
Thank you so much. I thank Minister of Foreign Affairs of Spain and the representative of the European Union. I would like to once again remind you to stick to the time limit of 3 minutes. And now the next speaker on my list is the distinguished representative of Finland, Minister Elina Valtonen, followed by Sweden. Dear Elina, you have the floor.
Distinguished Chair, Minister Osmani, dear Bujar, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. We meet in an extremely serious time as Russia continues its brutal and violent war of aggression against Ukraine. Russia is not only blatantly violating the UN Charter, but also breaking the core principles and commitments of the European security order. Russia has been trying to subvert these basic principles for years, including in Georgia in 2008 and in Ukraine since 2014. These principles are neither negotiable nor subject to revision or reinterpretation. Russia's notions of spheres of influence or zero-sum game have no place in Europe in the 2020s. War and destruction is Russia's choice. It is important to remember that Russia could end this war at any time, and Russia alone is responsible for where we are now, facing another winter of war in Europe. And already now we can say that Russia, who attacked with a quick victory in mind, has failed and will fail to defeat Ukraine. Ukrainians' resilience and bravery are admirable. Mr. Chair, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has severely damaged the OSCE. I want to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to you, dear Bujar, and to your team for your staunch leadership when faced with this challenge. Your team has worked hard to safeguard the future of this organization. We are very pleased that this week a consensus was found and grateful for the leadership shown by Malta by stepping up for the chairpersonship in 2024. We are ready to support you by all possible means as participating state and as a Troika member. Yet the disruptive policies of Russia continue to sabotage the functionality of the OSCE. We need a decision on the top 4 positions, all of them for 1 year. Mr. Chair, the OSCE contributes to promoting and upholding the rule of law, democracy and human rights, as well as conflict prevention and peace mediation in the OSCE region. We should make full use of the OSCE toolbox across all 3 dimensions in autonomous institutions and in OSCE field operations. Without the political will and commitment to the OSCE of all participating states, this organization's potential is not fully realized. This organization is only as effective as we, the participating states, allow it to be. While our focus is on Russia's war against Ukraine, we should not lose sight of the valuable and concrete work that the organization does across the OSCE region. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the OSCE staff in Vienna, in the autonomous institutions and field operations across the OSCE space for the important work that you carry out in a challenging time. As Finland is preparing to assume the chairpersonship in 2025, I want to stress our commitment to strengthen the rules-based order through reconfirming the Helsinki principles and to safeguard the OSCE to serve its purpose, promoting security in the OSCE region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I thank Minister Valtonen. Next speaker is Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sweden, Tobias Billström, followed by Germany. Tobias, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. While fully aligning with the statement of the EU, I make the following remarks in my national capacity. I thank Minister Osmani and his team for ceaseless efforts to find solutions to the pressing international challenges. I also express my gratitude to Secretary General Schmid, the heads of institutions, the Parliamentary Assembly and the OSCE staff for their dedicated work. I thank Malta for accepting the responsibility as chair for 2024 at a crucial moment for our organisation and European security. You can expect our full support. I also thank Estonia for standing by its candidature and the principles of which the OSCE is built, and we remain convinced that Estonia will make an excellent future chair. Excellencies, the European Security Order, based on international law, including the UN Charter, the Helsinki Final Act and the Charter of Paris, provides a blueprint to security for all participating states. It is under attack, but it is as valid as ever, and Sweden remained as determined as ever to protect it. At the core of the European Security Order is the right of every European state to choose its own security arrangements. And by applying for NATO membership, Sweden has exercised this invaluable right. Russia's unjustified and unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine is a flagrant violation of international law and of OSCE principles and commitments that we have all signed up to. The war of aggression, for which Russia bears the full responsibility, continues to cause immense suffering for Ukraine and its people and puts our common security in an extremely grave situation. We repeat our demand on Russia to stop its aggression and completely and unconditionally withdraw all of its forces and military equipment from the entire territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. We also call on Belarus to stop aiding and assisting Russia in its aggression. Excellencies, Ukraine is not only fighting for its own freedom, but for the security and values of Europe. Our support to Ukraine is crucial. The European Commission's recommendation to open EU membership negotiations recognizes the impressive reform efforts made by Ukraine despite the ongoing war of aggression. Lasting peace and security require accountability for all crimes committed in and against Ukraine, including for the crime of aggression. Impunity is not an option. Russia will be held to account. The OSCE is contributing to accountability efforts, including through ODIHR's monitoring activities, its open approach to civil society, and the Moscow mechanism reports. These show an indisputable link between internal repression in Russia and Belarus and their external aggression against Ukraine. We call on the Belarusian regime to end its repression, release all political prisoners and detainees immediately and unconditionally, to respect media freedom and civil society, and start an inclusive national dialogue. And we similarly call on Russia to abide by international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights laws, as well as its OSCE human dimension commitments. The loud and clear message from the Parallel Civil Society Conference here in Skopje confirms the growing authoritarianism and increased human rights violations and abuses in parts of our region. Here, the OSCE autonomous institutions plays an invaluable role, and Sweden strongly supports an extension of the mandates of the current heads of institutions and the Secretary General beyond 2023 in an equal manner. Excellencies, we must not also forget how Russia is extending its malign influence in other participating states. And I reiterate our support to Moldova and Georgia to strengthen their resilience, security, restoration of their territory, as well as their EU integration paths. We are also closely following developments in Nagorno-Karabakh, humanitarian support for refugees and safe return for those who wish to come back must be ensured, and we encourage Armenia and Azerbaijan to continue the EU-facilitated dialogue. Excellencies, my final words, the OSCE offers a valuable platform to address multiple crises of our region based on its founding principles and international law. And Sweden will remain committed and do its part. I thank you very much.
I thank Minister Billström. The next speaker is Federal Minister for Foreign Affairs of Germany, Annalena Baerbock, followed by the United Kingdom. Dear Annalena, you have the floor.
Vielen Dank, Minister Osmani, lieber Burja, liebe Generalsekretärin, liebe Helga Schmidt, sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin der Parlamentarischen Versammlung, liebe Pia Kauma. Wenn man ans letzte Jahr zurückdenkt, dann würden sicherlich viele das Treffen in Łódź nicht als wichtigstes politisches Signal, jedenfalls medial, sehen. Ich glaube, es war eines unserer wichtigsten politischen Treffen im letzten Jahr der Ministerrat der OSZE im Dezember 2022. Denn durch den Beginn des völkerrechtswidrigen Angriffskriegs hat Russland nicht nur die Ukraine, seine Menschen angegriffen, sondern auch unsere europäische Friedens- und Sicherheitsordnung. Wir haben in Łódź als 55 Staaten der OSZE deutlich gemacht, dass wir diesen zentralen Baustein unserer Sicherheitsarchitektur, unsere Organisation für Sicherheit und Zusammenarbeit in Europa zusammenhalten werden mit allem, was wir haben. 55 Länder, so unterschiedlich wie Sie, so unterschiedlich wie wir sind, von Zentralasien über die Republik Moldau, den Südkaukasus bis hin zum westlichen Balkan, haben sich dafür entschieden, auf der Seite des internationalen Rechts, auf der Seite von Frieden und Freiheit zu stehen, selbst wenn Russland versucht hat, mit einer Blockade des Budgets unsere Handlungsmöglichkeiten auf Null zu setzen. Und da Russland heute hier im Saal ist, der Außenminister offensichtlich wie auch bei anderen Sitzungen nur, wenn er selber spricht, aber nicht um anderen zuzuhören, sage ich an dieser Stelle noch einmal deutlich: Stoppen Sie diesen Krieg, der auch ein Krieg auf genau diese Organisation, die Sicherheit und Kooperation in Europa ist. Stoppen Sie das unsägliche Leid, das Sie über Millionen von Menschen bringen und mit dem Sie zugleich tagtäglich unsere Organisation, diese Organisation hier verletzen. Dazu braucht es keine Verhandlungen, dazu braucht es schon gar keine Zugeständnisse der Ukraine. Es braucht eine Entscheidung Russlands, die Grundprinzipien dieser Organisation, der OSZE, einzuhalten, die Truppen zurückzuziehen und sich wieder für Frieden zu engagieren. Ebenso deutlich möchte ich unterstreichen, dass 3 Mitarbeiter der OSZE-Beobachtermission nach wie vor in der Gefangenschaft Russlands sind und auch dass das eine brutale Verletzung unserer gemeinsamen OSZE-Regeln ist. Ich sage ebenso deutlich, wir werden weiterhin alles dafür tun, dass auch wenn dieser russische Angriffskrieg weitergeht, die OSZE nicht zerbricht. Denn wir haben gerade in den letzten Wochen gesehen, dass die Zukunft dieser Organisation und ihrer Werte wichtiger ist denn je, dass wir die OSZE immer wieder aufs Neue verteidigen müssen, wenn wir erhalten wollen, was sie für die Zusammenarbeit und den Dialog unserer Länder erreicht hat, als größte Sicherheitsorganisation der Welt. Ich möchte dem Vorsitz, ich möchte dir, lieber Burja, und auch deinem Team dafür danken, dass ihr es im letzten Jahr genau geschafft habt, diese größte Sicherheitsorganisation der Welt am Leben zu erhalten, mit ganz viel Kreativität, mit ganz viel Sonderbeiträgen. Auch dafür mein herzlicher Dank. Auch Deutschland hat einen erheblichen freiwilligen Beitrag zum Budget geleistet, um so wichtige Themen wie eben die Frage von Menschenrechten, von Freiheitsrechten, von Medienvielfalt, aber auch die Frage vom Schutz von Frauen und Kindern immer wieder auf die Tagesordnung zu bringen, was eigentlich ohne ein reguläres Budget kaum möglich gewesen wäre. Stellvertretend dafür steht, liebe Helga Schmidt, lieber Burja Osmani, die erste Gender Equality Conference der OSZE, die organisiert wurde, um deutlich zu machen, dass insbesondere Frauen und Kinder in Konflikten am meisten leiden. Ich bin dankbar, dass mit Malta jetzt ein neuer Vorsitz übernimmt, der ebenso gezeigt hat, dass er in den schwierigsten Momenten an Lösungen orientiert ist, pragmatisch handeln kann. Daher herzlichen Dank an Malta für die Übernahme des Vorsitzes 24. Und ich bin überzeugt, dass auch Estland diesen Vorsitz ebenso gut ausgefüllt hätte. Aber ein Vorsitz allein reicht nicht aus, gerade um die wichtige Arbeit für die Menschen. Unter dem Motto steht ja dieses Jahr der OSCE, It's about the people, um diese Arbeit für die Menschen fortzusetzen. Dafür brauchen wir eine Generalsekretärin wie Helga Schmidt, dafür brauchen wir einen Medienbeauftragten wie Teresa Ribeiro, dafür brauchen wir einen Leiter von ODIHR wie Matteo Mecacci und dafür brauchen wir einen Minderheitenkommissar wie Kairat Abdrachmanov. Ihnen allen möchte ich ebenso danken für Ihren unermüdlichen Einsatz während der letzten 3 Jahre, genau wie allen anderen Mitarbeitenden der OSCE, die die Werte dieser Organisation trotz der vielen Steine in ihrem Weg jeden Tag mit Leben füllen. Ich halte es für dringend erforderlich, dass wir morgen die Verlängerung eben von diesen 4 Personen gemeinsam beschließen. Arbeit funktioniert nur, wenn sie nicht ad hoc funktioniert, sondern langfristig. Deswegen war es guter Sinn und Zweck, dass die Arbeit auf 3 Jahre angelegt ist. Das halten wir nach wie vor für richtig, dass die Arbeit auf 3 Jahre ausgeführt wird. Aber ich möchte ebenso unterstreichen, wir werden nicht zulassen, dass eine Blockade der Handlungsfähigkeit dazu führt, dass die OSZE insgesamt nicht mehr arbeiten kann. Was allerdings nicht geht, ist ein Kompromiss von einem Kompromiss. Wenn es einen Kompromiss braucht, dann stehen wir bereit, aber Kompromisse von Kompromisse sind keine Kompromisse mehr, sondern sie sind dann eine Vollblockade. In diesem Sinne möchte ich an alle hier appellieren, alle, die bereit sind, auch zuzuhören und nicht nur selber hier Botschaften zu verkünden, dass wir alles dafür tun, die Handlungsfähigkeit unserer OSZE zu erhalten durch eine gemeinsame Entscheidung für die europäische Friedensordnung, durch eine gemeinsame Entscheidung für über 1 Milliarde Menschen in all unseren Ländern, so vielfältig wir sind. Es geht jetzt darum, die EU zu retten, saving the OSCE, meaning safeguarding our people. This is our responsibility. Herzlichen Dank.
I thank Minister Baerbock. The next speaker is UK Minister for the Armed Forces, James Hippie, followed by the United States. Dear James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Foreign Minister Osmani. I wanted to begin by paying tribute to you for your personal leadership of the OSCE in such difficult times, and to the Secretary-General and her staff. Our thoughts with those OSCE personnel cruelly detained by Russia. They must be released immediately. As our new Foreign Secretary said at dinner last night, we face a daunting set of challenges, but these only make clear why we must back the OSCE. The return of war to Europe only underlines the enduring value of this institution. OSCE principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-use of force should be the foundation of peace on the European continent. Russia has trampled on these principles with devastating results. Ukraine is fighting not just for its freedom, but the right of all nations to make sovereign choices free from coercion. Sustaining Ukraine's success means sustaining our support. The UK will continue to provide the economic, military, humanitarian and diplomatic support to ensure that Ukraine prevails. We want them to secure the lasting peace that their people deserve and the European continent needs. Nor can we waver in holding Russia to account for its actions against OSCE principles and commitments that it co-wrote. The OSCE has played a key role through the Moscow Mechanism reports in exposing the appalling reality of Russian atrocities in Ukraine. Given the crucial role of the OSCE in holding Russia to account, it is no surprise to see their continued efforts to undermine this organisation. We are delighted that in Malta we have a highly qualified chair in office, but we also need an agreed and appropriate budget. And above all, we need institutional leadership as well. All 4 job holders are carrying out their mandates extremely effectively and should be extended for at least a year. The UK is committed to working with all participating states to hold ourselves accountable across all OSCE principles and commitments. The OSCE was forged in the middle of the Cold War. Since then, it has sat at the heart of Euro-Atlantic security, and it has had Britain's full support. Russia is failing in its illegal war, but it must fail completely. And must fail also in its attempts to disrupt this organisation. We must deliver a strong, functioning and adequately resourced OSCE. We owe it to the OSCE's founders, to our citizens and to future generations.
I thank Minister Hippig, and the next speaker is Assistant Secretary of State for European and Euro-Asian Affairs of the United States, James O'Brien, followed by the Netherlands. Dear James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I wonder if I could add a personal note to the views expressed thus far, with which I wholly agree. It's an honor to speak here. As Secretary Blinken and I were preparing for his remarks last evening at the dinner, we noted that across our career, the OSCE has been the shining star of how governments try to uphold human rights and basic values. The Helsinki Final Act was, for me, as a young person, an amazing statement that human rights were not just universal, but that they were local, embedded in each of our communities, and that each of our governments had a responsibility to try to uphold them. And so when we come together here, it's not just an honor, it's a privilege, but it's a choice. We come together here because we recognize that each of us struggle to meet these aspirations in all circumstances, and we need the help of our partners. And so we support this organization not simply for others, but we do it for one another, and we do it for ourselves. And as the chair so eloquently said at the start this morning, we do it for the most vulnerable populations in each of our societies. And if that is what we are here to do, I think we have to reserve special criticism for those who attempt to block the functioning of this organization, because it's a direct affront not just to values that were put on paper in 1975, but to the lives of millions of people across our societies who are simply attempting to exercise the basic rights that we all agree they are afforded. So in this context, I join with all of my colleagues noting what a difficult year it has been. Russia's further invasion of Ukraine is a complete affront to civilized standards, to international law, and to the principles on which this organization is based. The continuing conflicts in Georgia and Moldova require our renewed commitment to resolve them and to bring those societies fully in line with the choices of their people to be a part of a broader community of countries committed to the rule of law. Yet Russia continues to block the operations, denying the ability to hold the basic conferences around which this organization has long functioned, and is detaining personnel of the organization in complete violation of their rights and the principles of this organization. Yet, for all that, we see the OSCE throughout 2023 deliver exceptional work. The field operations, the reports of the special rapporteurs, the functioning of ODIHR, the use of the Moscow mechanism, properly named in this context, to call attention to human rights violations committed in Ukraine. All of them show a creativity and a commitment to the values of this organization, of which I hope the staff is justly proud, because I'm proud to be associated with the work of this organization in that context. I add my voice to those of my colleagues calling for Russia to stop its violations of these of the basic principles of the organization, but I'm not sure that they are yet willing to listen. And so with that, I want to close by thanking our colleagues from North Macedonia for an exceptional stewardship of this organization, for thanking the Secretary General, Helga Schmid, for her leadership, and for the special rapporteurs and the leadership of the organizations within the OSCE for the work that they have done, because it makes all of us better. As we look to 2024, I'm gratified that we have a strong and capable chair in Malta. I appreciate the willingness to step up and ensure that this organization is able to function well. in 2024. I also want to note my appreciation for Estonia's willingness to lead the organization. It would have been an exceptional chair had it not been unfairly blocked. But I also appreciate its willingness to defer its leadership of the organization so that the organization can work well in 2024. It is vital that we see the leaders of the four main entities within the organization extended for a year. A simple agreement in that way would reflect, I think, the pattern of collaboration on which this organization is based. We have agreed on a chair that everyone can accept, and I think everyone except a very small number of states, particularly one, has expressed strong support for an extension of the four leaders for a solid year. And as my colleague from the UK noted, we want to see a sufficient budget agreed very soon. I understand that the numbers are agreed, and it's a matter of agreeing the political narrative. We hope to see that concluded within the next week by the ambassadors. So with all this, we believe the organization can thrive with Malta as its chair, that it will be able to do great work in 2024, and I hope that all member states are able to agree on the full extension of the four leaders. So again, I'm honored to be here, but this is a privilege and a choice. It is now the choice of the states that have been attempting to block the work of this organization to see whether they are willing to stand with the civilized community that is based on the Helsinki Final Act, or if they wish to continue their obstruction. The OSCE will do well either way, but it is a matter for them to choose whether they wish to be with us in this effort. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank Assistant Secretary O'Brien. The next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, followed by Luxembourg. Dear Hanke, you have the floor.
Thank you, Bujar. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the OSCE is the largest regional security organization in the world and therefore an important platform for discussion. We have different opinions, but that is precisely why it is important to continue to speak to each other. This is the second Ministerial Council that takes place against the backdrop of the unprovoked, unjustified and illegal Russian aggression against Ukraine. By waging this war, Russia has trampled on the UN Charter and the core principles of this organization as laid down in the Helsinki Final Act. Only Russia can stop this war. The Ukrainian people have been courageously defending their territory, their sovereignty and their freedom. As our relentless search for justice, even since MH17, has shown, the Netherlands is not one for giving up. The Netherlands will continue to support Ukraine with whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And the Netherlands is pleased to announce that we will support Ukraine with an additional €2.5 billion support package for 2024. Russia's crimes in Ukraine are many, but allow me to focus on a few. The Netherlands strongly condemns Russia's policy of illegally transferring and deporting Ukrainian children. The same applies to Belarus' complicity in this. These policies are aimed at destroying Ukraine's identity and culture. Russia should immediately return the Ukrainian children to their homeland. I call on all OSCE participating states to support efforts aimed at reunification of these children with their loved ones. And the Netherlands urgently requests, like other states here, the Russian Federation to release the 3 OSCE employees still kept prisoner after more than 20 months. We are also deeply concerned about the deteriorating human rights situation in both Russia and Belarus. People with dissenting opinions face threats to freedom or their lives. The Netherlands calls upon Russia and Belarus to free political prisoners, protect independent voices, and revoke repressive legislation. The Netherlands is very concerned about today's hearing in the Russia Supreme Court about labeling the LGBTQI+ community as extremist. In Belarus, according to UN experts, some of the widespread and gross human rights committed by Belarusian authorities may amount to crimes against humanity. Mr. Chairman, allow me to raise another topic. Last September, over 100,000 refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh fled to Armenia. We call on Azerbaijan to allow these people to return to their homes in accordance with the ICG order. We continue to advocate for their rights to unimpeded access to the region and protection of their property and cultural heritage. I call upon Azerbaijan and Armenia to engage in good faith in the peace process and to mutually respect each other's territorial integrity. The only durable solution for the Southern Caucasus is peace and stability. The OSCE is a unique institution, and it's vital that we preserve it as a platform for dialogue, as a way forward to help rebuild our common security architecture in the future, but also through our executive structures, which work closely with the participating states. On a day-to-day basis, the OSCE continues to deliver value to our citizens. We welcome that consensus was found on the OSCE Chair in Office 2024. We express gratitude to Malta for agreeing to step in at such a late hour. We call on all participating states to agree on the extension of the 4 top positions for a year. These times call for a strong OSCE. Let us do our utmost to strengthen it. Let's act, because it is about people. Thank you, Bujar, for your excellent leadership as chair. Thank you.
I thank Minister Bruns for her contribution. The next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of Luxembourg, Xavier Bettel, followed by Kazakhstan. Xavier, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Tout d'abord, je tiens à te remercier parce que je ne veux pas être grossier, faire un discours et partir après, mais j'ai mon avion et on m'a dit, le protocole de Nord-Macédoine m'a dit que je devais quitter à 12h10, donc désolé pour devoir partir. Nous vivons actuellement un moment de polycrise, c'est impressionnant. Nous avons sur notre continent, notre collègue néerlandaise vient de le dire aussi, que ce soit aussi Azerbaïdjan, Arménie. Si je regarde plus loin ce qui se passe en Israël, Palestine, si je regarde en Afrique le Sahel, si je regarde ce qui se passe autour du Rwanda et du Congo, on a des polycrises partout, ça brûle partout. Et c'est pour ça que les organisations internationales sont aujourd'hui plus importantes que jamais pour essayer d'avoir des échanges les uns avec les autres. But I want to say a few words to our Russian delegations, because I have to tell you, I belong to, I'm a strange guy. I'm Luxembourgish foreign minister. I was prime minister for 10 years. And my grandmother is from Russia. She was Orthodox. My grandfather was Jewish from Poland. My grandfather was Luxembourgish Catholic, and my grandmother was French and atheist. So I have all these different nations, cultures, religions, and tolerance in myself. I'm married to a Belgian man, so I'm also gay. So in some of your countries, I wouldn't be able even to have rights. But to have Russian roots and to have Russian contacts, I have to tell you, maybe some of you will be shocked, but I had a good relations with Vladimir Putin. President Putin was someone I had calls, I had exchanges. And at the beginning of the war, also, I called Volodymyr Zelensky and President Putin, and I tried to have exchanges. I felt after Bucha that there was no wish to find a solution. You can be shocked, you can be disappointed. I'm sad. With the behavior you had, you destroyed all we built up. Cultural, political, economic relations. And I'm deeply saddened that we are not able even to have exchanges. And during a call also with President Putin, I told him to know that his closest friends now is Pyongyang, it's North Korea, it's Syria, it's Eritrea. And to be so isolated and to see that the international community doesn't understand what happened. And in the calls I had with Vladimir Putin, he told me about the Russian language, he told me about Nazi, he told me about biological weapons. But we see that the narrative of your side is not the right one. To start a war is easy. To finish a war shows how leaders are. I'm sorry that you have to listen to me and not your Minister of Foreign Affairs, because it would have been the first time I would be able to have an exchange with him. It's never too late to see that you did a big mistake. You did a big mistake. And I'm sorry, because I tried at the beginning to have exchanges with you. I got criticized from other countries. They considered me as not solidary to trying to reach the hand to stop a war, where innocent people are dying every day. So I just can tell you, I won't be able to stay here to listen to Lavrov's answer. But stop what is not explicable, where there is no reason. And believe me, strength is not to show that you are stronger, but to end the pain of millions of people. Thank you.
I thank Minister Bettel, and the next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan, Murat Nurtleu, followed by France. Dear Murat, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset I express my sincere appreciation to Minister Osmani for his warm hospitality and able stewardship of our work as the chair in office. Since the early days of Kazakhstan's independence, developing cooperation with and within the OSCE has been a key dimension of our country's balanced multi-vector foreign policy. During its chairmanship in 2010, Kazakhstan sought to contribute to the revival of our robust dialogue and understanding at the highest level that must lie at the core of our organization. With your support, we hosted the summit and adopted the Astana Declaration, and its spirit remains very much relevant today. Excellencies, in an ever-changing global landscape, the OSCE can and should play a vital role in promoting stability and prosperity. By recommitting ourselves to the principles of the Helsinki Final Act and other key international documents will help our organization to develop a unique system of collective, comprehensive, and indivisible security. The lack of a political will among participating states to commit to a process of dialogue, however, has undermined the OSCE's very foundation and prevented it from delivering as well as tackling the existential crisis it faces today. Kazakhstan is deeply convinced that preserving and strengthening our organization that is based on the core principle of consensus is in the best interests of all of us. In this light, I reiterate Kazakhstan's readiness to work towards and join the consensus on the 2024 OSCE chairmanship, the appointment of all 4 heads of the institutions, and the unified budget. Overall, the present international situation and the challenges undermining our future are unprecedented and pose serious threat to global peace and security. At such a critical moment, we reaffirm our firm adherence to the United Nations Charter and its principles, as well as the international law. Esteemed colleagues, given the importance of the OSCE's human dimension, Kazakhstan joins other participating states in their efforts to promote democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. President Tokayev's 4 policy reform packages, followed by constitutional reforms and referendum, have ushered in a new era of justice, inclusiveness, and pragmatism. I do believe that this steps will contribute to ensuring stability and mutually beneficial regional cooperation, as well as to fostering the role of Central Asia as an important regional entity in Eurasia. In that connection, Kazakhstan actively works on the establishment of the United Nations Regional Center for Sustainable Development for Central Asia and Afghanistan in Almaty. Also, economic and environmental dimension always stands high in our regional agenda. Connectivity facilitates stable and sustainable economic order. Kazakhstan has invested over $35 billion in the development of major infrastructure projects, including the Trans-Caspian International Transport Road. The Middle Corridor linking China and Europe creates new advantages for our full-scale trade and investment interaction. Together with our partners, we are giving priority to removing bottlenecks along this corridor. Climate change is yet another pressing challenge for Central Asia, and the problem that demands immediate collective actions, especially in our fight against severe droughts, floods, heat waves, and forest fires. Our priorities and national measures on this track will be presented by President Tokayev at COP28 in Dubai tomorrow. Today, I take this opportunity to invite all delegations to a United Nations Regional Climate Summit to be held in Kazakhstan in 2026. Dear friends, as we deliberate on the crucial issues faced by our community, let us recall that the OSCE is not just a platform for dialogue. It is and must continue to be a force for positive changes in the lives of the people we serve. I reiterate my solidarity with my dear friend and colleague who is chairing this meeting, and with his motto to stand for our people and to join efforts for the sake of peace, stability and cooperation in the OSCE area. Thank you.
I thank Minister Nurtleu. The next speaker is Minister of State for Europe of France, Laurence Bon, followed by Canada. Laurence, you have the floor.
Merci, merci Monsieur le Président, cher Boujar Osmani. Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Madame la Secrétaire générale, chers collègues, d'abord je voudrais féliciter le Président de l'OSCE, Boujar Osmani, pour son leadership cette année et féliciter la Secrétaire générale et les 4 job leaders pour avoir tenu dans des conditions difficiles tout au long de l'année. La France s'aligne bien évidemment sur la déclaration de l'Union européenne et je vais ajouter quelques points en ma capacité nationale. En attaquant massivement, délibérément l'Ukraine, la Russie a enfreint toutes les règles du droit international. Elle s'est affranchie des fondements de l'ordre européen à laquelle elle prétendait appartenir et des traités de l'architecture de sécurité européenne. Par son agression injustifiée et injustifiable contre l'Ukraine depuis plus de 20 mois, avec la complicité du régime biélorusse, la Russie bafoue les principes de l'OSCE. Cette guerre, c'est évidemment l'Ukraine qui en est la première victime. Ce sont des enfants ukrainiens qui ont par milliers été déportés vers la Russie, comme l'a documenté le rapport publié dans le cadre du mécanisme de Moscou de l'OSCE. Comme mes collègues européens et au-delà, nous exhortons la Russie à cesser son agression, ce qui implique le retrait complet, inconditionnel et immédiat de ses troupes et de ses équipements militaires du territoire ukrainien dans ses frontières internationalement reconnues. Notre détermination est sans faille pour soutenir l'Ukraine et ne faiblira pas. Face à la poursuite insensée de l'agression russe, nous soutenons pleinement le travail engagé autour du plan de paix du président Zelensky. Et à ce titre, je salue la réunion organisée à Malte le 28 octobre dernier, et la participation d'un nombre croissant d'États qui témoignent de notre engagement collectif à répondre aux répercussions globales de cette guerre. Ce qui est en jeu aujourd'hui, c'est la préservation de la souveraineté, de l'indépendance, de l'intégrité territoriale, de l'inviolabilité des frontières et le règlement pacifique des tous les principes sur lesquels repose l'OSCE. La Moldavie et la Géorgie subissent également la violation par la Russie des principes fondateurs de l'OSCE à travers la présence militaire illégale russe sur une partie de leur territoire et des nombreuses attaques hybrides qui visent à saper les fondements de leur société démocratique. S'agissant de la situation dans le Caucase du Sud, nous déplorons que 100 000 Arméniens du Haut-Karabakh aient été forcés de quitter le Haut-Karabakh après l'offensive militaire entreprise le 19 septembre par l'Azerbaïdjan avec la complicité de la Russie. La France appelle à la mise en œuvre de la décision de la Cour internationale de justice du 17 novembre 2023. Elle a aussi demandé que l'Azerbaïdjan veille à ce que toute personne se trouvant au Haut-Karabakh ne fasse pas l'objet de recours à la force ou d'intimidation. L'OSCE fait partie intégrante des priorités françaises et nous sommes déterminés à la défendre. Je souhaite d'ailleurs saluer les efforts de la présidence macédonienne de nouveau pour conduire l'OSCE à la suite de la Macédoine du Nord. À cet égard, il n'est pas envisageable de ne pas prolonger les 4 top jobs d'au moins 1 an quand nous en demandions 3. Le programme de soutien en Ukraine est l'un des exemples de la capacité d'action de l'OSCE que la France soutient et nous devons continuer à travailler pour renforcer son action en lien avec les autorités ukrainiennes. Les missions de terrain de l'OSCE continuent de renforcer la sécurité des États participants et de leurs citoyens dans les Balkans occidentaux, en Asie centrale et en Moldavie. Et dans le Caucase du Sud, nous sommes favorables à ce que l'OSCE s'engage davantage au bénéfice des populations locales. J'insiste, la capacité d'action concrète de l'OSCE repose en grande partie sur l'action conduite par les titulaires des 4 postes à responsabilité de l'OSCE. C'est pourquoi nous demandons sans plus tarder un accord pour leur prolongation en paquet pour au moins 1 an, ce qui est déjà un compromis par rapport à la proposition initiale de 3 ans pour tous. J'adresse de nouveau pour conclure tous mes remerciements à la présidence de la Macédoine du Nord, tous mes vœux de succès à la prochaine présidence maltaise, dont je salue le ministre Jan Borg, que j'assure du plein soutien de la France, comme nous aurions soutenu l'Estonie, tout à fait légitime pour mener cette organisation. Je vous remercie.
I thank Minister Bond. The next speaker is Parliamentary Secretary of Canada, Mr. Robert Oliphant, followed by Ireland. Mr. Oliphant, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais continuer en français avec un accent canadien-anglais. Alors que nous sommes réunis ici aujourd'hui, la Russie poursuit sa guerre brutale contre l'Ukraine. Avant tout, nos pensées sont avec les Ukrainiennes et les Ukrainiens qui subissent et continuent de subir des attaques incessantes contre leur pays, leur maison, leur culture et même leurs enfants. La Russie tente de détruire l'Ukraine, son identité et son avenir. Malgré cet assaut, la population ukrainienne continue de se mobiliser et de se défendre et de défendre son pays. Et le Canada demeure solidaire de l'Ukraine aujourd'hui et demain. Russia's interference is not limited only to Ukraine. Russia has also repeatedly undermined the sovereignty and territoriality of Georgia and Moldova, most recently by interfering in democratic elections in Moldova. Russia's aggressions threaten not only its neighbors and the rest of Europe, but threaten the entire world. Russia's actions have negatively impacted on global food security and energy security, with a huge impact on some of the most vulnerable people in the world in the global south. And they have renewed fears today of a nuclear threat, not to mention the devastating damage its war in Ukraine is inflicting on the environment, which also has global impact. With these actions, Russia has turned its back on the structures and systems that we collectively have all agreed to live by, that have been put in place to prevent conflict and violence and to safeguard human rights. They include international law, the UN Charter and its foundational documents, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as our own principles at the OSCE and our commitments, which are reflected in the Helsinki Final Act, and other decisions of this organizations. While these decisions are made by our governments, acting on behalf of our people, they are primarily about people. And I want to again echo the theme, it's about people. Because we are here about their security, their health, their well-being, and their prosperity. Again, Mr. President, it is about the people. We're also deeply concerned about areas also in our region that are other than that. Canada is deeply concerned by the refugee crisis in Armenia. More than 100,000 people, as have been said, have fled from Nagorno-Karabakh following Azerbaijan's military operations, most recently in September. It's about people. We are also deeply concerned by the situation in Belarus. There, the flawed elections of 2020 have been followed by draconian restrictions across society and the detention of more than 1,500 political prisoners. The people of Belarus deserve better. It's about people. Monsieur le Président, l'OSCE a un travail important à accomplir. Chaque jour à Varsovie, à Vienne, à La Haye et dans ses bureaux régionaux, l'OSCE contribue à la surveillance des élections, au renforcement des institutions démocratiques et à l'amélioration de la sécurité des frontières. L'OSCE s'efforce de lutter contre l'extrémisme violent et le trait de personnes, et de renforcer la gouvernance et de développer les capacités économiques et environnementales. Je voudrais remercier les membres du personnel de l'OSCE pour votre travail. Votre travail est professionnel, dévoué et assidu. Sans vous, nous ne pourrions pas remplir nos engagements, les engagements qui sont au cœur de notre mandat. Et vous le faites en dépit de la Russie, qui abuse de notre principe de consensus pour entraver notre travail à maintes reprises et pour paralyser notre organisation. Mr. Chair, Canada would like to thank you particularly and personally, as well as North Macedonia, for its principled leadership this year. As chair of the Forum on Security Cooperation, Canada has underlined the importance of frank, constructive dialogue and the intrinsic links that all three dimensions of comprehensive security have with the military sphere. As chair in office, you have raised the issue of gender and gender equality, and that is extremely important. And I also want to note the Secretary General and her comments with respect to elevating the role of women in all aspects of our work at the OSCE. We need a functional, strong OSCE now more than ever. We need conversation and dialogue. We need to safeguard the OSCE's principles and its comprehensive approach to security. In this respect, we welcome Malta for stepping forward to take on the role of the chair in office in 2024, extending thanks as well to Estonia. We hope that we can see similar progress on the renewal of the mandates of the top four, as has been suggested by almost everyone in this room, as well as on the budget, so that our organization can continue to fulfill its important mandate. Mr. Chair, as you said last year, the Helsinki commitments must be our lighthouse. They must be our guiding principles. They must guide us in the darkest and deepest nights of terror. We are deeply grateful for how you have steered this ship despite the terrible storm our world has found itself in, and we have found ourselves in every day. You have kept us on course. Thank you for that. We must continue to follow. Canada remains committed to the success and the importance of the OSCE. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Oliphant. The next speaker is Minister of State for European Affairs and Defence of Ireland, followed by Hungary. But please let me remind you once again about the speaking time that we have agreed. You have the floor, Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister Osmani. Ireland fully aligns with the statement made by the High Commissioner, High Representative on behalf of the European Union. These remarks are made in our national capacity. Minister Osmani, let me express our sincere thanks to you for your leadership and commitment to leading the OSCE over the past year. You and your team have shown importance of the perseverance and positivity in challenging circumstances. I would like to thank you for bringing all participants states together in Skopje today. I am very grateful to the OSCE Secretary-General, Helga Schmidt, for her leadership, commitment and resilience. I also want to put on the record my appreciation for the work of the OSCE Secretariat, field missions and autonomous institutions. Their efforts on our behalf are greatly appreciated. I would like to thank the ODIHR Director Representative on Freedom of the Media and High Commissioner for National Minorities for their exceptional work. Let me welcome the next Chair in Office, Mr. Ian Berg, Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Affairs and Trade of Malta, and assure him and his team of our full support. Ireland is grateful to Malta for stepping up to take on this role at this critical time for our organisation. Minister Osmani, you emphasised that the OSCE is about people. The Russian Federation's unprovoked and unjustified war of aggression against Ukraine continues to wreak devastation on the country and its people. The list of those who have been killed or maimed continues to grow. Entire communities, schools, homes, hospitals and other civilian objects continue to be destroyed. Millions of people have been displaced. Children have been forcibly deported and civilians detained for no reason. Many are subjected to horrifying torture and sexual violence by Russia's forces. At the Warsaw Human Dimension Conference in October, we heard the chilling testimonies of civilians who have been arbitrarily and illegally detained by Russia. There is no justification for Russia's actions in Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are suffering the awful consequences of severe environmental damage, including long-term impacts of the destruction of the Kharkova Dam and the widespread use of landmines and unexploded ordnance. Russia's ongoing attacks on civilian infrastructure, its threats to Ukrainian nuclear facilities, and its decision to withdraw from the Black Sea Grain Initiative demonstrate Moscow's contempt for the people of Ukraine and the wider regional and global security. Ireland condemns Russia's heinous attacks in the strongest possible terms. We call on the Russian Federation to immediately and unconditionally withdraw from Ukraine and release all detainees, including the 3 OSCE SMM personnel unjustly detained for more than a year and a half. Let me reiterate Ireland's solidarity with the government and the people of Ukraine as they defend themselves against Russia's unprovoked aggression. Ireland will work with international partners to ensure accountability and to restore essential civilian infrastructure. Ireland will also continue to be a strong advocate for Ukraine's EU membership aspirations. Regrettably, the number of people affected by or at risk of being impacted by conflict in the OSCE area continues to grow. Implementation of the OSCE commitments in all its dimensions is the best route to improve the lives of citizens in the OSCE area. Ensuring the full, equal and meaningful participation of women is crucial. We must implement a gender-responsive approach in all our work. Mr. Chairperson, the OSCE, an organisation we greatly value, has been without a unified budget since 2021, despite delivering sustainable results and very good value for money. For the organisation to flourish, it needs an improved budget and adequate resources. I urge all participating states to adequately fund this important work and place the organisation on a more sustainable footing. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
I thank Minister Burg, and the next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary, Peter Szijjártó, followed by Portugal. Dear Peter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Bujar. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to the global security, actually it's not an exaggeration to say that it is in its worst shape, putting into consideration the last 30 years. Unfortunately, this is especially true when it comes to Europe. We would not have thought, even not in our nightmares, that there would be a war in Europe in the 21st century. And we Hungarians are living in the neighborhood of the war. And we see the suffering it brings. We have received more than 1 million refugees. We see and feel the impacts in the form of the skyrocketing energy prices. And we are paying the price of this war as well in the form of an inflation which is like 10-15 times higher than it normally should be. And we pay the price, we feel the impacts, and we see the suffering even if we bear no responsibility for the war, and even that it is not our war. And I'm representing a nation, dear colleagues, members of which are dying in this war. There is a significant community of Hungarians living in Ukraine, around 150,000. And since they are Ukrainian citizens, they are being mobilized to the Ukrainian army. Many of them have been deployed to the front lines, and many of them have died already, unfortunately. And we Hungarians do not want more people to die. We don't want more Hungarians to die, but generally speaking, we don't want more people to die in our neighborhood. Therefore, we Hungarians make our full strength to argue in favor of peace. We see peace is the only solution, and peace is the only way to save lives of the people. And this is the only way to avoid further destruction. And I think that if we have a look at the last more than 1.5 years now, it's obvious that those who pretend that there is a solution at the battlefield, they are not right. There is no solution on the battlefield. There are dead people on the battlefield, and there's destruction on the battlefield. And those are not right either who say that the developments on the battlefield will improve the chance for peace. This is not true either. Every day spent in this war makes the hope for peace worse and worse. And we do believe, dear friends, dear colleagues, that the weapon deliveries do not help either. The weapon deliveries prolong the war, and we don't need war, we don't need weapons in the region. What we need in the region is peace. And in this regard, I would like to emphasize that keeping the channels of communication is vital. Keeping the channels of communication is vital, because if we block the channels of communication, then we basically give up the hope for peace. And we do not want to give up the hope for peace. And therefore, dear Bujar, I'd like to commend all of your efforts you have made in order to make this organization survive, and in order to give a chance to return to a civilized East-to-West cooperation, or if not cooperation, at least an East-to-West dialogue. And we really did have the hope that here in the wonderful city of Skopje, we could take advantage of the presence of our colleagues from Russia and the United States simultaneously. And although they are very important people, very important persons, very fully packed agenda, but we really did hope for a direct communication between them. And we regret to see that it does not take place this time either. Although I do believe that such a communication, such a direct contact, would be to the benefit of all of us, of Europe, and of the peace-loving people. So, Bujar, I'd like to really thank you for all the efforts you have made in order to make this happen. And this is not your fault that it does not take place. Look, we Hungarians have suffered from a communist dictatorship for 40 years in a world which was distributed into blocks. We had the oppression from the East, and we had the ignorance from the West. And we were the losers of a world which was divided into blocks. And we don't want to come back to a stage of history when we are going to be losers again. So please do not distribute the world into blocks again. Instead of blocks, we would like to see a global cooperation. We would like to see connectivity. And we would like to see mutual respect returning to international political life. We want a civilized cooperation between East and West, out of which we could take a lot of benefit. In the recent years, dear colleagues, Europe has lost a lot of its competitiveness. The one reason for that was that the basis for European competitiveness, namely the combination of the Western technologies and the Eastern sources of energy, have been cut one by one, and we don't see the replacement, to be honest. Therefore, this is really alarming and concerning to us, listening to colleagues speaking about decoupling and de-risking and further isolation of the Eastern and Western economies. And we don't want that, because that would further worsen our situation in Europe. We had a strategic goal back in Hungary, and that was to become a meeting point of East and West, a meeting point of the Eastern and Western economies. And you know what we see? The biggest German companies are working together happily with the biggest Chinese companies in Hungary. If this happens on the ground, then why do we want to break this kind of cooperation? Why do we want decoupling and de-risking instead of global cooperation? And if it worked in Hungary, I do believe it could work regionally and globally as well. And we hope, or we would hope, that we could take advantage of the existence of OSCE as a platform for the dialogue between East and West. What would be the other reason OSCE to exist, if not to talk to each other between the Eastern and Western colleagues? And I really do hope that we can turn the tide. We are in the 24th hour. That's not a question. And we do hope that the next period of time will be characterized by connectivity and global cooperation instead of creating blocks in the world again. Thank you.
I thank Minister Sierto. The next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of Portugal, João Gomes Cravinho, followed by Norway. João, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Chairman, dear Bujar. I'd like to start by thanking the Republic of North Macedonia for leading the OSCE through this hard year. These are very demanding times, and for hosting us in Skopje today, of course. Excellencies, distinguished participants, in less than 2 years, in 2025, we shall be marking the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act, the commitment that marked the founding of this organization, in which we collectively confirmed our will to promote better relations amongst us and to guarantee conditions in which our people could live in true and lasting peace, free from any threat or attack on their security. Unfortunately, this is not what is happening in our region, much to the contrary. Throughout this year, the lack of consensus and of political will to overcome it has prevailed. Portugal deeply regrets that due to Russia's obstructive positions, Estonia, the only official candidate, was denied the opportunity to take the chairpersonship for 2024 without any serious justification. Portugal is very grateful for the efforts by the Republic of North Macedonia and for Estonia's constructive approach, which enabled an agreement on Malta as the next chair of the OSCE in 2024. We commend La Valletta's willingness to accept this mission at the last minute and to take on this role at such challenging times for the region and for our organization. Different perspectives on the principles enshrined in the founding documents have always coexisted. But historically, there was a genuine political will on all sides to build a security architecture for Europe. Recently, however, the OSCE has been taken hostage by frequent obstructions to consensus, with a negative impact on the proper functioning of the organization and its efforts to ensure security and to promote cooperation in the region. These boycotts, paired with the confrontational logic, are guided by purely national, rogue interests, contrary to the spirit of Helsinki and of Paris. Lack of consensus strangles the functioning of the OSCE and impairs its ability to act on the ground. And we, the 57 participating states, need to start counteracting this disruptive trend. The security of each participating state is globally and inseparably linked to that of all the others. We must continue to preserve OSCE's ability to fulfill its duty and the organization's acquis, its comprehensive approach to security in all three dimensions, its structures, and the operability of the field missions, as well as the mandates of the autonomous institutions. In this regard, Portugal considers the role of the autonomous institutions to be of the utmost importance in safeguarding and promoting the organization's acquis. From the outset, Portugal has prioritized a renewal package for the 4 leaders of the autonomous institutions, because the so-called top 4 have demonstrated excellence, full commitment and transparency when exercising their mandates over the last 3 years. So Portugal believes that the renewal of the mandates of the Secretary General, the RFOM, the HCNM and the Director of ODIHR for at least a year can only be beneficial for the organization, ensuring credibility and effectiveness in the organization's activities in the current challenging circumstances. A special word here to Teresa Ribeiro, who, given all the difficulties and challenges of recent years, has carried out outstanding work as representative on freedom of the media, when we are facing the most serious crackdown on freedom of expression and of the media in the OSCE region. Ms. Ribeiro has acted in an exemplary, transparent and independent manner in defense of pluralism, freedom of expression and media freedom, honoring her mandate. Excellencies, now is the time to restore trust between our countries and engage in a constructive dialogue that helps not only bring peace and stability again to Europe, but also to create the conditions to preserve it. The consensus rule is a matter of responsibility and not a sign of flaws or faltering power. OSCE remains the only multilateral space outside the UN for addressing the serious common challenges in Europe, and we should not forget this. Russia's reckless behavior has had a terrible impact on our organization. Trust has been seriously eroded within the OSCE area, undermining the implementation of OSCE commitments. We regret that we are moving further away from fulfilling the vision of a comprehensive, cooperative and indivisible security community, as once agreed by us. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine marks an inflection point in the stability of the European security architecture that emerged from the post-Cold War era. It is important that we do not allow the OSCE to become another victim of Russia's reckless behavior. Portugal believes that a strong and independent Ukraine is vital for the stability and security of Europe. We reaffirm our determination to continue supporting Kyiv in exercising its right to self-defense. Therefore, we shall continue to provide Ukraine with military equipment and training, because this is currently the most significant contribution to security and cooperation in Europe. We seize this opportunity to say that Russia must stop its aggression and pull its armed forces out of Ukraine immediately, because it bears exclusive responsibility for this terrible war. The risks of spillover effects of Russia's aggression in protracted conflicts in our region are real. The tragic circumstance of ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, which counted on Russian connivance, Russia's threats and actions against Moldova and Georgia, in Transnistria, Abkhazia and South Ossetia are also deeply concerning. Portugal supports all initiatives aimed at fostering good faith and political will in implementing the OSCE's comprehensive toolbox across the full conflict cycle and in all three dimensions, including the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. Dear colleagues, Portugal is deeply committed to effective multilateralism. Our trust in the OSCE is unwavering. The OSCE remains one of the guardians of the fundamental acts and values governing security in Europe. The fundamental principles and commitments of the Helsinki Final Act and the Paris Charter must be safeguarded. We are all responsible for this mission. And finally, allow me to again commend the Republic of North Macedonia for steering this organization during 2023 and to wish Malta all success in the new chairmanship. You know that you can count on Portugal's absolute support. Thank you.
I thank Minister Cravinho. Let me once again remind you about the speaking time. And now the next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway, Espen Barth Eide, followed by the Russian Federation. Minister Espen, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bojar, and let me recognize the chairpersonship in office and the Secretariat for its excellent work under very difficult circumstances. But that's exactly what we need in these times of challenges, serious challenges to the organization and the purposes it represents. The Helsinki Final Act, so many has referred to, was set up in a time where we agreed about very little because we were in the middle of Cold War. But we did agree on this, that the borders, the frontiers should be inviolable and there should be respect for fundamental human rights. 30 years ago, when the CSE turned into the OSCE, it was a time of opportunity and hope and new opportunities, and many countries emerged stronger with strong democratic institutions, stronger civil society, better respect of minority rights, and the OSCE played a key role in fostering that. We are much better off in the transatlantic area than we would have been without. But it was also a decade of challenges and problems. And some of our countries, unfortunately, descended into communal violence and internal strife and conflict. This country, the host country, North Macedonia, were among those that was feared to do that, but actually managed to avoid it, thanks to the leadership and the people and the communities of this country, but I would say also thanks to the support of many of us through this organization and other organizations. So it's an example, and it was actually the first ever country that receive an OSCE mission. What we did not see neither after 1975 or after 93 was a flagrant violation of international law in the form of classical interstate conflict, the invasion of one country into another. This is exactly what the UN Charter was set up to avoid, and exactly what the Helsinki Final Act was set up to avoid. So this is a unique circumstance that is not comparable to anything else we have experienced in these almost 50 years. That has to have consequences, and that's why so many of us are now reminding each other that our support for Ukraine and Ukraine's cause is unwavering. But the consequence it should not have is that we weaken this organization. Quite on the contrary, we need the OSCE to emerge stronger and more powerful and more effective out of this. So Norway strongly underlines all those and echoes everyone who said that we need to ensure the budget extension and also the full extension of the four heads of the key services. I commend North Macedonia and Bojar personally for what it has done. I congratulate Malta and thank Malta for taking on this crucially important talk, and I also want to recognize and thank Estonia for showing will to be flexible at a difficult time. We deplore the reasons why, but we have to say that a lot of people contributed to making that good, and that was 3 minutes, so I will then thank you for the attention.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, followed by Denmark. Mr. Minister, you have the floor.
Благодарю вас. Господин действующий председатель, госпожа генеральный секретарь, коллеги. Чуть более чем через год исполнится 50 лет Хельсинскому заключительному акту. В этой связи с сожалением вынужден констатировать, что к этой юбилейной дате ОБСЕ подходит в плачевном состоянии, а ее перспективы остаются неясными. После окончания Холодной войны и связанного с ней идеологического противостояния появился исторический шанс на то, чтобы объединительный потенциал ОБСЕ был по максимуму задействован, чтобы организация стала площадкой для самого широкого общеевропейского сотрудничества, центральным элементом в деле формирования в Европе и Евроатлантике инклюзивной архитектуры равной и неделимой безопасности во всех 3 измерениях. В рамках военно-политической корзины государства-участники приняли целый ряд фундаментальных документов, ориентированных на создание Европы без разделительных линий, в самом широком смысле этого термина, а также предусматривающих недопустимость укрепления собственной безопасности за счет безопасности других. В их числе Парижская хартия для новой Европы 90-го года, Хартия европейской безопасности 99-го, Астанинская декларация 2010-го. Россия со своей стороны приложила максимум усилий для достижения упомянутых благородных целей. Именно на это были ориентированы наши многочисленные инициативы, включая заключение договора о европейской безопасности и создание общего пространства безопасности, основанного на сотрудничестве. К сожалению, западные политические элиты, присвоившие себе право вершителей судеб человечества, сделали близорукий выбор не в пользу ОБСЕ, а в пользу НАТО. В пользу философии сдерживания, геополитических игр с нулевой суммой и логики ведущей ведомой. Одной из ключевых составляющих такой линии стала безоглядная экспансия НАТО на восток, начавшаяся после распуска Организации Варшавского договора. Can you leave me alone, please? Thank you. Хотя, как казалось, завершение биполярного противостояния лишало Североатлантический альянс смысла его существования. Государства НАТО и Евросоюза своими руками разрушили военно-политическое измерение ОБСЕ. В 1999 году натовцы совершили акт неприкрытой, грубой агрессии против Югославии, члена ОБСЕ и члена ООН. А в 2008 году в нарушение резолюции 1244 Совета Безопасности и зафиксированного в Хельсинском заключительном акте принципа нерушимости границ в Европе у Сербии было отторгнуто Косово без всякого референдума. Те же государства НАТО, которые являются участниками ОБСЕ, на Бухарестском саммите Альянса в 2008 году поманили членством Тбилиси и Киев. Цель была простая и незатейлива – натравить их на Россию. Саакашвили, пришедший к власти в результате поддержанной Западом революции РОС, отработал выданный ему в Бухаресте карт-бланш сразу, в августе того же 2008 года, приказав бомбить города Южной Осетии и атаковать позиции миротворцев, находившихся там с согласия ОБСЕ. Готовили эту провокацию Соединенные Штаты, которые запустили в Грузии свою программу «Обучи и вооружи». Чему учил Вашингтон, то Саакашвили послушно и выполнил. Для создания на Украине антироссийского плацдарма потребовалось значительно больше. Кровавый госпереворот 2014 года и 8 лет карательной операции против населения Донбасса при поощрении Запада в нарушении Минского комплекса мер, одобренного Советом Безопасности. Хотел бы в очередной раз напомнить о циничных признаниях Меркель, Олланда и Порошенко о том, что минские договоренности нужны были им не ради мира на Украине, а только для того, чтобы предоставить киевскому режиму время для наращивания военного потенциала против России. В ряду сорванных попыток решить острые проблемы нашего континента на принципах ОБСЕ и меморандум Казака, который мог бы надежно урегулировать ситуацию в Молдавии еще 20 лет назад. натовский и ЕСовский Брюссель тогда бесцеремонно торпедировал уже парафированный Кишиневым и Тирасполем документ. А сейчас убивают и формат 5+2, последнее, что остается от совместных усилий по приднестровскому урегулированию. По сути, Молдавия готова научить следующей жертвы в развязанной Западом гибридной войне против России. Каждой стране, где сейчас активничают западные эмиссары, фонды и так называемые неправительственные организации, стоит задуматься. Члены НАТО с подачи США заблокировали вступление в силу соглашения об адаптации до ВСЕ и проигнорировали конкретные российские предложения по восстановлению жизнеспособности режима контроля над обычными вооружениями в Европе. Своими действиями американцы похоронили и договор по открытому небу, и девальвировали целый ряд других основополагающих документов, направленных на укрепление взаимного доверия в области безопасности. Истинные намерения западных политиков в очередной раз проявились, когда Вашингтон и Брюссель отвергли выдвинутые Россией в декабре 2021 года предложения по юридически обязывающим гарантиям безопасности в Европе. С нами даже разговаривать не захотели. На мое послание министром иностранных дел США и стран-членов НАТО 28 января 2022 года с просьбой ответить на вопрос, как вы трактуете принятые на саммитах ОБСЕ обязательства не укреплять собственную безопасность за счет безопасности других, никто из них даже не ответил. Вместо этого нам прислали пустые бумажки от внешнеполитической службы Евросоюза и генсекретаря НАТО, которым послание даже не адресовалось. Суть позиции Запада – наплевать, что там подписали наши президенты и премьеры в ОБСЕ, юридические гарантии безопасности может предоставить только НАТО. Вот так относится группа стран во главе с исключительной державой к нашей уже явно неуважаемой ими организации. Не менее печальна ситуация во второй корзине ОБСЕ. В стремлении обрушить российскую экономику США и их европейские сателлиты ввели против России тысячи санкций, тем самым поставив крест на широкой практической кооперации между Востоком и Западом в нашем некогда общем регионе. Киевский режим инвестиции Вашингтона в свои эгоистичные интересы сдерживания России и решения собственных проблем за счет других, включая устранение экономических конкурентов, прежде всего в лице Европейского Союза. Несмотря ни на что, ЕС продолжает покорно играть отведенную ему незавидную роль, вынося основную тяжесть последствий украинской авантюры США и смиренно отказываясь от тех форм экономического партнерства, которые десятилетиями обеспечивали процветание Евросоюза. Впечатление таково, что ЕС отбросил первоначальные цели своих создателей о повышении благосостояния граждан стран-членов и превратился во многом усилиями брюссельской бюрократии в агрессивный геополитический проект. Говоря о судьбе ОБСЕ, нельзя не остановиться на человеческом измерении. Эту корзину наполнили большим набором обязательств, адресованных, подчеркну это особо, всем странам-участницам. Однако и здесь стоит проблема равноправия и объективности. БДИПЧ без каких-либо правил и процедур нацелила свою работу исключительно на странах к востоку от Вены. На выборы наблюдателей ОБСЕ едут с подготовленными заранее заключениями. При этом БДИПЧ закрывает глаза на многочисленные нарушения прав человека на Западе. Московский механизм с ангажированными экспертами тоже старательно отрабатывает политический заказ. Представитель по вопросам свободы СМИ молчит, когда репрессируют незападные средства массовой информации. Уже который год не можем согласовать повестку дня обзорного совещания по человеческому измерению, в том числе из-за того, что некоторые делегации упорно препятствуют включению в нее проблемы неонацизма. И это при том, что в Европе, в первую очередь на Украине и в Прибалтике, наблюдается всплеск нацистской идеологии и практики, других форм расовой и религиозной нетерпимости. Восхваляют гитлеровских коллаборационистов, сносят памятники воинам-освободителям, закрепляют эти преступные действия законодательно. Правящий в Киеве неонацистский режим перещеголял даже страны Балтии в своих действиях по законодательному искоренению всего русского. Отрицается само существование русских, их решающий вклад в историю Украины. Людям запрещают общаться, читать и учиться на родном языке, иметь доступ к русскоязычным СМИ и культуре. Фактов предостаточно, а ОБСЕ и ее профильные институты молчат. Молчали и тогда, когда из откровенно дискриминационного законодательства о так называемом государственном языке киевский режим сделал исключение, но только для языков Евросоюза, а не для русского. Причем промолчал и просвещенный Брюссель, никак не высказавшись о необходимости уважения многочисленных конвенций ООН, ЮНЕСКО, Совета Европы, гарантирующих равные права всем национальным меньшинствам. На днях председатель Верховной Рады Стефанчук на голубом глазу заявил, что никаких русских меньшинств на Украине нет и быть не может. Это цитата. Судя по всему, глава украинского парламента никогда не читал следующий текст. Я цитирую. «Гарантируется свободное развитие и защита русского, других языков нацменьшинств. Государство содействует консолидации нации, развитию ее исторического самосознания, традиций и культуры, языковой и религиозной самобытности всех нацменьшинств. Не допускается сужение содержания прав и свобод. Не может быть привилегий или ограничений по признакам расы, политических, религиозных и иных убеждений. Гарантируется право обучения на родном языке». Конец цитаты. это лишь небольшая часть из действующей Конституции Украины, которую никто не отменял и на которой под аплодисменты Запада приносил присягу Зеленский, а до него Порошенко. Но все опять молчат, и ОБСЕ, и Венецианская комиссия, и Евросоюз, и Соединенные Штаты, не замечая надругательства над основным законом Украины. Под это молчание и при поощрении Запада киевский режим развязал омерзительную кампанию против Украинской православной церкви, включая захваты храмов, гонения на верующих и физические расправы над священнослужителями. Обращаю особое внимание, все эти преступления против прав человека начались не в феврале 2022 года, а сразу после кровавого госпереворота в феврале 2014 года, когда неонацисты захватили власть, разорвав подписанные накануне соглашения об урегулировании под гарантией Германии, Польши и Франции, которые быстро смирились с этим унижением. На этом фоне поразительно по своему цинизму заклинание брюссельских руководителей о том, что Зеленский во всех своих действиях защищает европейские ценности. Теперь еще хотят в ускоренном порядке открыть для киевского режима двери в Евросоюз. Как говорится, нацистов принимаем вне очереди. Стыдно. Возникает вопрос, зачем нам ущербные правозащитные институты, которые превращаются в инструмент тех, кто взял курс на приватизацию секретариатов международных организаций под свои нужды? Каким интересам общеевропейской безопасности и сотрудничества служит такая вот ОБСЕ? Нынешняя ситуация – прямое следствие настойчивых попыток наших западных соседей обеспечить свое доминирование, беззастенчиво используя ОБСЕ для агрессивного продавливания узкокорыстных интересов и сознательно разрушая основополагающий принцип консенсуса и саму культуру дипломатии. Любому неангажированному человеку понятно, что серьезно и по-честному решать вопросы европейской безопасности так не получится. Однако западные столицы с завидной одержимостью добивают шансы ОБСЕ на возрождение. Уже создали европейское политическое сообщество без России и без Белоруссии. Тем самым прочерчена еще одна разделительная линия на нашем континенте, разрушающая пространство ОБСЕ. Инициаторам этой затеи следовало бы крепко подумать о том, как их детище соотносится с теми благородными идеалами, которыми руководствовались отцы-основатели Хельсинского процесса, да и авторы Парижской хартии для новой Европы. Коллеги, традиционно выступления на наших совещаниях принято завершать на оптимистичной, положительной ноте. Однако сейчас особых поводов для оптимизма нет. ОБСЕ, по сути, превращают в придаток НАТО и Евросоюза. Организация, давайте признаем это прямо, находится на краю пропасти. Встает простой вопрос. Имеет ли смысл инвестировать усилия в ее оживление? Сможет ли она когда-нибудь адаптироваться к объективным реалиям мирового развития и вновь стать площадкой для рассмотрения проблем региональной безопасности на основе принципов Хельсинского заключительного акта, прежде всего принцип равенства всех стран-участниц? Пока вопросов гораздо больше, чем ответов. Но тем временем жизнь не стоит на месте. Процессы евразийской интеграции и равноправного сотрудничества на основе честного баланса интересов развиваются на нашем континенте в конструктивных форматах, независимо от все более глубокого погружения ОБСЕ в навязанную ей конфронтационную повестку. Благодарю за внимание.
I thank you. The next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, followed by Turkey. Minister Rasmussen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it appears, it has fallen to me to speak after the Russian foreign minister, so I feel obliged to address some of his, to put it mildly, very misleading remarks. It will not be possible within the timeline to address them all, but just the most recent. Prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine on 24 February 2022, intense outreach to Russia was undertaken. Multiple rounds of talks were held. Russia chose to end those. And however, we will not compromise on the core principles of the European Security Order or allow Russia to deny Ukraine the right to make its own independent foreign and security policy choices, principles that Russia itself has agreed to. We will not accept Russia's attempt to divide Europe into spheres of influence. Russia's actions are in breach of the rule-based international order, and Russia's attempts to blame others for its own choices are transparent. And that is why 141 countries voted in favor of the United Nations General Assembly resolution the 23rd February last year and demanded that Russia, I quote, immediately, completely and unconditionally withdraw all its military forces from the territory of Ukraine. Unfortunately, the minister has now left the room. So much for the dialogue. I really regret that he didn't stay and listen to my friend Xavier better when he made his intervention. I could echo that one. I'm born and raised in the shadow of the Berlin Wall. My first international political meeting was in Russia in '85, attending an international youth festival. As many of you, I felt the sense of optimism when Euro emerged. I hosted Putin in Copenhagen. We inaugurated a Danish-Russia business forum. We spent a night together in Tivoli. And I truly believed at that moment that Russia would be a country which we could cooperate with. So this is not just politics. It also, on a personal note, a feeling of being very, very, very disappointed. Yeah. And then, Mr. Chair, just to continue what I had prepared, it goes down the same line. Last year, a dark shadow fell on the OSCE area, on the promises we have given each other as members of this organization. Over 640 days have now passed since Russia unleashed an unprovoked and illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. This is a brutal assault of the UN Charter and the OSCE commitments. Russia's actions undermine international security and they cause immense human suffering. The Danish government has said it countless times before, but let me repeat it once again in this room today. We condemn Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine in the strongest possible terms. Our commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and independence is unwavering. No doubt about that. The OSCE was founded on shared aspiration to promote peace, security and cooperation, to build mutual confidence, to keep channels of communication open at all times and across the European continent. 50 years ago, we made a collective choice to come together around these aspirations. And now they are in shadows. And the OSCE is facing severe challenges on a range of issues. We were without agreement on the chairpersonship until the 11th hour, and we are still without a budget and without consensus on the appointment of the 4 top positions in the organization. The primary resource of this chaos is one and just one participating state, Russia, which has chosen to disregard the principles and agreements that the OSCE was built on. Mr. Chair, since last year's Ministerial Council, Russia has withdrawn from the Treaty of Conventional Armed Forces in Europe. This is just one more example of Russia's disregard of the pillars of the OSCE, the common principles of conventional arms control and confidence-building measures. Following Russia's withdrawal, Denmark has decided to suspend its participation in the CFE treaty. However, it remains our hope that developments will allow for return to the treaty at a later point. Denmark remains committed to the principle of effective conventional arms control as a key element of Euro-Atlantic security. And we commend the OSCE autonomous institutions and their leaders for their efforts to promote and protect democracy, human rights and the rule of law in our region. Your work, mandates and institutional independence is essential, not only when it comes to security, but also on fundamental rights. The right to live in peace, the right to free and fair elections, the right to freedom of expression. The security crisis we are witnessing right now is just as much a crisis of human rights. As aptly put by the North Macedonian chairpersonship, it's about people. Let me conclude by commending the Secretary General and the Secretariat who have conducted their important duties under increasingly challenging conditions. I can only express my gratitude and full support to them in their work. And let me end with a warm thank you to our current chairperson in office, Minister Osmani, dear Buja, and his team for leading the organization through these difficult times. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank Minister Rasmussen. The next speaker is Minister of Foreign Affairs of Albania, Igli Hassani, followed by Switzerland. Dear Igli, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, Secretary General Schmidt, Director Mekachi, Representative Ribeiro, High Commissioner Abdrakhmanov, President Kauma, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, let me first thank the chairpersonship. Thank you, Buyar, for offering us your hospitality, and thank you too for your tireless work and leadership. Your work as chair of the OSCE throughout this challenging year is the best proof that entrusting the chair of the organization to North Macedonia at the Tirana Ministerial Council in 2020 was the right choice. I have a very strong connection to the OSCE. An important part of my career is tied to this organization. I can attest to its value and strength and also its limitations. I believe that the way the OSCE responds to the challenges it faces today will define its future. But in order to face the future, we must first recognize the source of the challenge we face today. The biggest threat to our security today, indeed to our entire security architecture, including this very organization, is Russia and its illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. This tragic war has had dramatic repercussions for the OSCE across all three dimensions. By misusing the unique mechanism of our cooperation, the consensus, and by blocking it for all important decisions, Russia has sought to weaken and paralyze our organization. We heard the same distorted messaging a few minutes ago. Same words as in 1956, 1968, 2008, 2014, 2022. Then they send us the tanks. In the meantime, other conflicts and crises, the panoply of transnational threats, terrorism, organized crime, violent extremism, and cybercrime, and the adverse effects of climate change on security continue to cause suffering and hardship for many of the 1 billion people that the OSCE umbrella covers. They take a heavy toll on human rights and fundamental freedoms too, particularly on women and children. Developments in Afghanistan or in the Middle East have again highlighted the necessity for OSCE's enhanced engagement with our Asian and Mediterranean partners for cooperation. All of these challenges require a strong organization. In the Western Balkans, in our region as a whole, and many of our individual countries, we know firsthand what a positive impact a strong OSCE can have. We know too that a strong OSCE is once again needed today, because despite the progress of past decades, the old threats that have plagued the history of our region are once again rearing their heads. And again, behind these attempts to foment trouble in the Western Balkans, we can distinguish the same hand that is trying to weaken the OSCE. The events in Kosovo are but the latest flashpoint in this attempt to draw attention away from the war in Ukraine by stirring up conflict in the Western Balkans. We're doing our best to counter these threats alongside our allies and partners. Albania continues to work hard and proactively for a stable and peaceful Western Balkans. We remain a guarantor of our region's European orientation of security, stability and democracy. But a concerted and committed effort by all our friends and partners is needed to neutralize these attempts to take us back to a time of identity politics and conflict. Kosovo and Serbia must resolve all differences through dialogue, of course. There is no alternative to dialogue. But we must all recognize that the best way to make the Western Balkans, and by extension Europe, more secure is to recognize Kosovo's independence and grant its rightful place at this table and to any other international forums. Mr. Chair, the OSCE has a unique role to play in promoting peace and security in these times of global turbulence. With the outcomes of this Ministerial Council, we have taken a small step forward. but we still have a very long way to go. And the path forward by necessity passes through the restoration of our principles and commitments. It will not be easy, but it's the only way. Albania commends the readiness of any participating state to step up as chair. It is a huge responsibility, it's true. But a far greater and heavier responsibility for us all would have been to have no chair for next year. Fortunately, that outcome seems to have been avoided. I congratulate Malta for coming forward to lead us next year. It is our duty too to secure continuity and full representation for the 4 most senior positions of the executive structures. The Secretary General and the heads of institutions have done commendable work and merit the continuation of their mandates. Many thanks to their dedication. And many thanks to the hundreds of great staff members that work for the OSCE. We should support them, so they should support us. Good luck to you, dear Chair, and to us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I thank Minister Hassani. And the next speaker is Federal Counselor and Head of the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, Minister Ignacio Cassis, followed by Austria. Dear Ignacio, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, Excellencies, after the last few interventions, I once again have to admit that leading the OSCE in this period is a Herculean task. Core principles of the OSCE are under pressure. The ongoing Russian military aggression against Ukraine, which Switzerland has strongly condemned, has deepened the rift between the participating states and fueled mistrust. But let me first of all express my gratitude to the Chairperson and Foreign Minister of North Macedonia, Bujar Osmani, as well as to the Secretary General, Helga Schmidt, for their tireless efforts in upholding the OSCE's values. Security through cooperation is beneficial to all of us. With Russia's military aggression against Ukraine continuing, the major challenge for our cooperative security remains unsolved. I will never tire of repeating Russia must withdraw its troops from the sovereign territory of Ukraine. Switzerland stands behind Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in these terrible times. We also observe with concern that other crises in the region are flaring up again. Reconciliation and peace processes are stagnating or even interrupted. In the Middle East, October 7th marks a turning point. Switzerland has condemned the terrorist attacks by Hamas in the strongest terms and requests the immediate release of all hostages. My country called on all parties to protect civilians, to avoid a regional escalation and to respect international humanitarian law. In such a period of uncertainty, the principles enshrined in the Helsinki Final Act have lost none of their importance. On the contrary, refraining from the use of force, respect for the territorial integrity of states, for the fundamental freedoms and the related responsibilities must remain our essential values. Let me reiterate here my call for an organization of non-like-minded states in Europe to facilitate exchange and to manage and prevent crises and conflicts. But for the OSCE to endure, the political and operational foundations must be in place, and important steps in the right direction were taken this week in Vienna. I welcome very much Malta's readiness to assume the chairmanship for 2024 and reaffirm our full support for the unanimous decision taken this Monday in the Special Permanent Council. Thank you, Jan Borg. But further steps must now follow. First, The Secretary General and the heads of the autonomous institutions should ensure the continuity of the organization's business next year. My country would like to see their terms extended. Secondly, the OSCE needs its annual budget approved. It requires sufficient financial means to deliver on its mandate. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, despite all negative trends, the last 21 months have also shown how resilient the OSCE is. The presence of the many field missions has a stabilizing effect in sensitive and critical regions. Switzerland supports the OSCE's presence in Ukraine, and we fully stood behind the activation of the Moscow mechanisms. There can be no peace without justice for the victims and their families. Excellencies, dear colleagues, the Helsinki Final Act must remain our compass. I am deeply convinced that with the necessary political will, we can make use of the OSCE toolbox to support its participating states. The road to Helsinki 2025 must be an opportunity for us to give the OSCE and with it peace and security in Europe the new impetus it urgently needs. Thank you.
I thank Minister Kasius, and the next speaker is Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs of Austria, Alexander Schallenberg, followed by Bosnia-Herzegovina. Dear Alexander, you have the floor.
Dear Chairman, dear Buja, Mr. Secretary General, dear Helga, dear colleagues. When I left our meeting 1 year ago in Poland, I went away with two findings. First, and we all know that in this room, we are facing the ruins of our European security order after Russia's brutal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. And to echo what Lars Rasmussen, my Danish friend, said beforehand, we all know that there is one person only, who could end this war of aggression today, and that is the Russian president. Nobody else carries this responsibility. And the second finding 1 year ago was that there's a continued commitment, at least I had the feeling, to the OSCE by our member states. However, a year later, the shameful truth is our words were not matched by deeds. Most of us are acting a little bit like construction workers who are standing around a building with their arms crossed, looking at the building and the things that need repair. But nobody steps in, nobody feels responsible to finally get the job done. But we are here, we are gathered here today precisely to do that, not to lament the status quo, but to get a job done. And in this sense, dear Buja, dear Chairman, you deserve our sincere thanks and gratitude for the tremendous effort you have and your team have undertaken the couple of past months to find, not only to keep this organization afloat, but also to find a chair for the next year. And I know from first experience as a foreign minister of a seat state how lonely sometimes a chairperson of the OSCE can feel in this work. And again, I want to say, as I said yesterday already, to our colleague Ian in Malta, our deepest respect and appreciation for having the courage to step forward in these very difficult times. I can assure you, Ian, that we will support you in any way we can. As a seat state for this organization, Austria feels a special responsibility, and we won't let you down. But we all know in this room, dear colleagues, that we still cannot agree on a budget, nor on the rollover of the top post, including the Secretary General. And Helga has worked hard to keep this organization afloat over the past year, and she deserves our continued and fullest support, as do the heads of the three other institutions. We all know the OSCE was never an organization of like-minded countries or a peer group. And to a certain extent, our situation today is similar to the context 50 years ago when the CSC was founded. And today, like then, everybody here in this room shares the same responsibility when it comes to keep this organization up and running. This is no time to play tactical games. The existential crisis of the OSCE is too threatening and must end. Or in other words, do we really lack the political will to prevent the OSCE's death by negligence, or the courage to sit down at one table with countries with which we have deep-rooted differences? I don't hope so. But since we are here all together today, let me make an effort in positive thinking. The last couple of difficult months have proven that actually at the end of the day, nobody around this table really wants the OSCE to hit the wall. This should be our starting point of our work. This realization should be the starting point of our work. And we should get this job done. We need this organization. I believe we will need it even more so in the future. And to end, I want to cite the then Austrian Foreign Minister Rudolf Kirchschläger, who in 1973 stated at the conference of the CSCE, and I quote, "Our historic experience shows that our differences will not be resolved at one conference. There is no guarantee that we will attain our goal of a peaceful and secure Europe, or that it will not be lost again. Our generation and the generations after us will need to strive for it again and again. But the way towards this goal can only lead us forward." In this sense, I strongly appeal to all of you to show the same kind of leadership our predecessors did 50 years ago. Thank you.
I thank Minister Schallenberg, and the next speaker is Foreign Minister of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Elmedin Konakovic, followed by Turkey. Dear Elmedin, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, dear Bujar, distinguished heads of delegations, President of Parliamentary Assembly and Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor and pleasure to address the 30th Ministerial Council of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe on behalf of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Mr. Chairman, allow me to start off by thanking you for your hospitality and by joining my colleagues in congratulating you and the government of the Republic of North Macedonia for an impressive and remarkable chairmanship in office of the OSCE this year. The OSCE operates, as well all know, in a rather complex geopolitical landscape that has started to significantly challenge the OSCE ability to effectively address common security issues. It is clear that the organization and all of us here find ourselves at a crossroads. Where we go from here is very much up to us. A renewed commitment to the fundamental principles that underpin our organization is of utmost importance. As we gather here to address the challenges and opportunities that lie before us, it is imperative that we renew our shared dedication to the principles that bind the OSCE together. In these challenging times, our commitment to the OSCE's core principles become even more critical, reinforcing our role as a steadfast anchor of stability, dialogue and cooperation in an evolving international landscape. We welcome the readiness of Malta to assume the function of the OSCE chairmanship in 2024, thereby offering a solution for one of the most pressing issues of our organization. On the other hand, the unified budget still awaits adoption, and the OSCE's top 4 positions are all up in the air. In that regard, I wish to stress that the politicization of the issue of reaching a consensus on the unified budget is very much regrettable, and we call on all OSCE member states to adopt the budget urgently and without any delay in accordance with the Chairman's proposal. Furthermore, in order to ensure the continuation of the effective functioning of the organization, we must work hard in order to reach consensus on the top 4 management positions of the OSCE. We support the Chair's efforts in this area and look forward to working together with participating states in order to extend the mandate for those positions. Bosnia and Herzegovina would like to express its appreciation and commend the Chair of the OSCE for their professionalism and hard work during all of 2023, but especially for their utmost efforts to overcome some of the challenges I've just talked about. Allow me to also commend the Secretary General and all of the professionals at the OSCE, both in Vienna and around the world, for their continued professionalism and hard work despite obvious challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, our commitment to the organization, which we have heard thus far and will continue to hear about for the rest of this session, cannot remain only declarative and has to be accompanied by actual support to this organization, to its mandate and work to find diplomatic solutions, promote dialogue, and prevent the further escalation of conflicts. The challenges that OSCE faces are significant, but they are certainly not impossible to solve, and they will require all of our help to properly address them. Let us remember the words of the Helsinki Final Act, which marked the beginning of our journey. It called for a common understanding of our diverse society, a world in which each individual can develop his full potential, and the genuine pursuit of cooperation and peace. Our commitment to these ideals is what defines us at the OSCE. And I want to underline that Bosnia and Herzegovina has joined the common statement of EU member countries read by my friend and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jose Manuel Alvarez, at the very beginning. Thank you very much.
I thank Minister Konakovic, and the next speaker is Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, Burak Akçapar. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister Osmani. Thanks also for your very warm hospitality in Skopje. Allow me to thank you and North Macedonia for shouldering OSCE chairmanship this year and commend you for your very hard work. Let me also commend Secretary General Schmidt and 4 top leaders of this organization and the staffs. We look forward to continuing to work with you in the time ahead. Turkey appreciates and congratulates Malta for stepping forward as chair for 2024. We are meeting once again under extraordinary circumstances for international peace and security. The tragic war in Ukraine has been continuing for soon to be 2 years now. The devastation, destruction, and human suffering in Ukraine have been immense. The war's regional and global fallout is also on the rise. We have all been negatively affected by this war. Let me reaffirm once again our principled position in support of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, as well as our commitment to upholding dialogue and diplomacy for a political settlement. Since we last met in reinforced format in late September, we have been witnessing an immense devastation, destruction, and human suffering in another part of the world, not too far away from the OSCE region. Unfortunately, on and after 7th of October, we have been shaken to the core because of the massive loss of civilian lives. After initial high ground, Israel has been indiscriminately targeting and heavily attacking civilians and all kinds of civilian infrastructure, including hospitals in Gaza. Humanity has not seen such massive loss of civilian lives, mostly women and children, in such a short period of time in recent history. The United Nations itself has never lost such a huge number of civilian personnel in an armed conflict. As North Macedonia Chair's motto says, it is about people. Yes, it should be. Not just my kind of people, but all kind of people. Excellencies, dear colleagues, it's not an overstatement to say that OSCE has been going through the most challenging period in its history. There have been difficult times in the past as well, times when it was not easy to take decisions. However, it never got to this situation as it is the case now. Yet the organization remains important as the most inclusive platform for comprehensive security and cooperation in Europe. This platform, as is, needs to be preserved. If we cannot pull the organization out of the difficult state it is in, then what hope can we entertain for cooperative security anywhere, anytime? Europe, from Atlantic to the Urals, would be locked into confrontation, even conflict, no transparency, no arms control, no confidence, nor security. It is time for reflection and action. Reform should be part and parcel of our work. I believe the old but very relevant concept of cooperative security, which underwrote the post-Cold War security architecture and discourse in Europe, should be given a fresh opportunity in 2024 and 25. If there was no OSCE today, we would not be able to create it. It is such a unique construct. It's such a valuable construct. It is against this background that my country, Turkey, would ask fellow members to seek consensus, but also compromise and vision to strengthen this organization and open a new chapter for cooperative security in Europe. To facilitate debate, we will devote attention to this topic in the context of the upcoming Antalya Diplomacy Forum in March, in the very forum which brought together Ukraine and Russia for the first time together after February 2021. Thank you for your attention.
I thank you so much. And since we have gone way beyond our available time for the first session, I propose that we close the first plenary session in order to allow for sufficient time to proceed to the lunch. We will resume our work in the second plenary session at 3 p.m., where we shall continue with our list of speakers under agenda item 6, statements by heads of delegation. And the first speaker in the afternoon will be the delegation of Malta. The first plenary session is closed.
Excuse me, there is one announcement. So, since we have the lunch at the Alexandra Palace, for those who would like to walk, of course, can walk to the Alexandra Palace. For those, there are buses outside for the heads of delegation and +1. Thank you so much.